Millionaire CEO Veronica Langford wanted to test her black janitor's integrity. She deliberately left the door to her safe, which was full of money, wide open, and waited with bated breath for his reaction. But what Jalen did left her completely speechless. Jalen moved like a ghost. This was the first vital lesson he had learned, especially in houses like this. The marble floors were as slick as a mirror, the hallways smelled faintly of money and lemons, and the white walls were so pristine they echoed. He always kept his head down, worked quickly, and never lingered where he didn't belong. Veronica Langford's mansion was the most prominent example. Employees only dared to whisper about their boss, saying that she disliked being looked at directly and had once fired a driver just for breathing too loudly during a phone call. Jalen didn't believe the rumors, but he did believe in caution, and in Veronica herself. His boss moved as if she had never known hardship, a millionaire CEO, unmarried, unyielding, and trusting no one. For Veronica, trust was a luxury she had long discarded, like an out-of-fashion handbag. After being betrayed once or twice, she had decided that suspicion was the strongest shield to protect herself. Jalen, the janitor, was a quiet black man in his late 20s. He had a patchy beard, a faded grey t-shirt, and worn-out shoes. She didn't know his name and had never needed to, but tonight was different. Veronica stood in the surveillance room, arms crossed, eyes glued to the screen. The safe door in her office had been intentionally left wide open. Inside were $2.7 million in cash, jewelry, bearer bonds, and her mother's antique sapphire necklace. There were no alarms, no security team, just an irresistible invitation. She had left everything that way for one reason, to prove she was right, that there was no truly honest person in the world, especially when money talked. And Jalen, the janitor, was just the newest candidate for her suspicion. It was 11:06 p.m. when Jalen reached the top floor, carrying his familiar mop and bucket. He got to work immediately, dusting bookshelves, arranging pillows, and scrubbing corners with silent efficiency. For over an hour, he didn't hesitate or even glance at the valuable items placed throughout the rooms. Then, the moment arrived. He headed down the east wing. Veronica leaned forward, watching the screen. She paused right before the open door. He was stunned to see the heavy vault door open. It was usually locked and glowing behind clear glass, but tonight it was wide open, silent and inviting. He froze in the doorway, his heart pounding. Inside, a fresh stack of $100 bills peeked out next to a pile of shiny coins. A hefty Rolex glittered beside a Cartier box, and behind it all were gold bars straight out of a movie. Jalen let out a long breath, trying to calm himself. Jalen saw the money and was frozen. His hands trembled, a shaking he couldn't control. Veronica, watching through the surveillance screen, clenched her jaw. She was sure he would walk in, but Jalen didn't. He didn't step forward or touch anything. Instead, he cautiously backed away and then dropped the bucket. Water splashed everywhere on the floor. Jalen muttered a curse, then bent down to quickly wipe it with his rag. His fingers were shaking uncontrollably. It wasn't out of greed, but out of shame. For the first time in his life, he had to sternly remind himself, do not steal. In the surveillance room, Veronica leaned forward, frowning. No one had ever stared at the safe for so long. No one had ever seemed scared of money. Jalen was still on his knees, holding a mop in one hand and a rag in the other. He looked up again, his gaze sweeping over the luxuries. It would be so easy. 10 seconds, a gold bar, a stack of cash. He could disappear from this city, pay off his mother's medical debt, fix his brother's car, even buy a pair of boots that didn't squeak. But instead, he whispered something. This isn't me. Don't turn me into someone else. Then he stood up, and to Veronica's surprise, he walked over not to steal, but to close the safe door. Veronica, however, did not let her guard down. She muttered, people change under pressure. They're only pretending until the reward is big enough. Just then, as if fate wanted to test them both again, The cheap phone in Jalen's pocket vibrated. He flinched, quickly pulling it out. It was a call from his mother. His expression changed instantly, anxiety replacing tension. Veronica zoomed in on the screen, turned on the audio, and pursed her lips as she heard the trembling words. On the other end of the line, his mother's voice choked out. "Jalen," they said. "They said our family's grocery store will be foreclosed by the bank if we don't pay off the $38,000 debt by the end of this week." That was the family grocery store, their only source of income, and all his father had left behind. Jalen listened in silence, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had landed on them. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He promised his mother he would find a way. "Don't worry, Mom, I'll take care of it," he said, even though he had no idea how. Then he hung up, staring at the open safe. The distance between him and a solution to all his problems was only a few steps. $38,000 was just a grain of sand in the desert of wealth before his eyes. Jalen stood motionless in the hallway, in a heavy silence. Veronica held her breath. This was it. Real pressure. Now, there was no more pretending. Jalen hesitated, his hand resting on the cold steel of the safe door. He could feel the chill through his skin, but a fierce battle was raging in his mind. But then, he pulled his hand away. He took a deep breath, turned his back on the temptation, on the easiest solution. Veronica was completely surprised by Jalen's actions. She realized that he had not only passed her test, but had also shattered her beliefs about people. For the first time in over a decade, Veronica felt trust stirring within her heart. She went downstairs to talk to Jalen, admitting that she had been watching his every move on camera. It was then that she opened the door. The sound startled him. Jalen turned around, eyes wide, his chest heaving. Veronica walked in, the sound of her heels echoing on the marble floor. Her expression was neither angry nor smug. It was completely unreadable. He stood frozen, every instinct telling him to run, but he didn't. "I didn't touch anything," he said, his voice dry and exposed. "I know," she replied. He blinked. I thought it was open by mistake. I was going to close it." She was silent for a moment. Instead, she looked past him, at the untouched safe, at the puddle of cleaning water still seeping into the grout. Then, she looked back at him. "Why didn't you take it?" she asked, her lips pursed. "I heard the phone call. I know you need the money." "Because I'm poor," he finally said, his voice heavy. "But I'm not broken." Silence descended, strangely heavy. "I've been poor my whole life," he added. "But if I took that, I'd have to carry that weight forever. I'd rather keep my peace of mind than chase your money." Veronica was speechless. She hadn't anticipated this. She had expected excuses, tears, desperation, but not self-respect. He took a step back, bracing for the worst. "If you're going to fire me, I understand." "Why would I fire you?" Veronica asked, her voice a near whisper. "Because you thought I came up here to take something. Did you?" "No," he said simply. "I came to clean." Veronica didn't move. Neither did Jalen. They stood there in a tense silence. In that strange quiet, the mansion was suddenly no longer cold. The air wasn't so perfectly sterile, not so suffocating. And Veronica, who had tested so many people, had finally met a man whose answer didn't need verification, a man who had passed the test without ever knowing it. "I came to clean." The words echoed in the hallway long after Jalen said them. Veronica didn't blink. Her hands, which had been crossed in a gesture of control, slowly fell to her sides. For the first time in years, she didn't know what to say. Her entire test, the weeks of planning, the paranoia and suspicion, had led her to this moment. A janitor with tired eyes, but standing firm in his dignity. Veronica walked over, looking into the vault. Everything was intact. Even the puddle of cleaning water remained on the floor, staining her precious tiles. "I should care," she thought to herself, "but I don't." "Go home, Jalen," she said softly, out of the blue. He seemed surprised that she knew his name. He nodded and turned to leave. But just before he disappeared down the stairs, he stopped. Without turning back, he said quietly, "You don't need to test people to know who they are." Then he was gone. That night, Veronica couldn't sleep. The fear of being robbed had dissipated, replaced by a feeling of shame she hadn't felt in years. She thought about the employees she had treated like pawns, the security guards replaced just for coughing, the women fired for laughing too much. Her entire life had been wrapped in power, until a janitor with a mop dared to look her in the eye and made her feel so small. She poured herself a glass of wine, standing in the cold living room with its gold decorations, and made a chilling realization. She couldn't remember the last time someone had told her the truth without wanting something in return, and that scared her more than losing money. The next morning, Jalan didn't show up for work. Human Resources reported that he had returned his badge before dawn. No complaints, no fuss, just a quiet departure. Veronica sat alone in her office, staring at the empty chair across from her. The man she couldn't trust was the only one who hadn't disappointed her. She opened her computer, found Jalan's employee file, and clicked on the emergency contact section. There was only one name, Mama Ruth. A phone number was scrawled next to it. No address, no relatives. Her finger hovered for a moment, then she picked up the phone. Jalan didn't answer, but Mama Ruth did. Her voice was warm, seasoned, and full of pride. "Jalan?" she chuckled. "That boy doesn't use his phone anymore. He gave it to his cousin who needed it for school." Veronica paused. I just wanted to say thank you." "For what, dear?" "For raising someone who doesn't choose the easy way." There was a pause on the other end. Then Mama Ruth sighed, a sigh not of sadness, but of understanding. "Life ain't easy for that boy, miss. But I always taught him that wealth can be lost, but character must be kept. It's the only asset that truly belongs to you." Veronica felt a strange stirring. She had a background check run on Jalan's family's debt. Unsurprisingly, she knew it was still unpaid. She could have resolved it with a single phone call, but she knew that wasn't what Jalan would want. It would be another test, an act of pity that his dignity would not accept. 2 weeks passed with no news, no trace. Until one afternoon, while returning from a meeting, Veronica saw him. Jalan was working at a shelter downtown, mopping the floors next to a little girl drawing flowers with chalk on the very tiles he had just cleaned. He didn't notice her car parked across the street. Veronica got out slowly, unsure if she would be welcome. But Jalan looked up, and to her surprise, he smiled. It wasn't a forced smile, nor was it bitter. It was genuinely heartfelt. "Hello," he said. "I was looking for you," she replied. "I guess so." He wiped his hands on his pants, hesitating. "Didn't think I would pass your test." She shook her head. "I didn't think anyone would." They stood in a significant moment of silence. "I don't know what I want," she confessed, "but I know I was wrong. My suspicion hurt a good person, and I want to fix that." She took a deep breath. "I don't want you to clean anymore, Jalan." He frowned. "Are you firing me again?" "No," she said. "I'm offering you a new job." He raised an eyebrow. "I want you to help manage my staff," she explained. "Train them, teach them, and protect values that are more important than money." He chuckled softly. "You trust me now?" She nodded. "More than I trust myself." Jalan looked down at the little girl still drawing beside him. He thought about his mother's store, about the burdens. This job could solve everything, but more importantly, it was an acknowledgement, a recognition of his dignity. "Only if I get to go home at 6 p.m. sharp," he said, a mischievous smile briefly crossing his face. Veronica smiled. "Deal." Soon after, Veronica did something no one expected. She didn't give Jalan money, but she used her network to renegotiate his family's debt, turning it into a much lower interest loan that could be paid off over time. She did it quietly, through a third party, so Jalan would never know she had intervened. It was her first act based on trust, not control. Months later, the mansion had changed. The silence had lessened, replaced by more smiles. Jalan no longer mopped floors. He wore a crisp shirt and carried a briefcase. But sometimes, Late at night, when no one was around, he would still walk past the safe. Now, it was always kept locked, but even if it wasn't, he would do the same thing, leave it be. Veronica had also changed. She no longer tested people by how they acted in the face of temptation, but by how they treated others when no one was looking. And whenever anyone asked her how her house had finally become a home, she would say, "It started on the night a man looked at my safe and chose to walk away." If this story touched your heart, remember to like the video and subscribe for more powerful, moving, and unexpected stories. And let us know in the comments where